The galactic research station Kepler 442b floated silently in the darkness between two dying stars. Its white hull gleamed under the distant starlight, a small beacon of civilization in the vast emptiness of space. Inside, 12 beings from different worlds worked together, studying plant samples from across the galaxy. Hyunwoo pressed his face against the observation window in Laboratory 3, watching the stars. He had been on the station for 6 months now, longer than he had ever stayed anywhere since leaving Earth. The other crew members treated him well enough, though they sometimes gave him strange looks when they thought he was not watching. Still staring at nothing human, Hyunwoo turned to see Dr. Nara entering the lab. The Quilaxian scientist stood barely 4 feet tall, her blue-green skin shimmering under the artificial lights. Her large black eyes studied him with the same curiosity she showed her plant specimens. "Just thinking," Hyunwoo replied, moving back to his workstation where dozens of seed samples waited for analysis. "The view helps me focus." Dr. Nara made a soft clicking sound that passed for laughter among her people. Humans and their strange habits. On Quilax we would never waste time staring at emptiness. Hyunwoo smiled but said nothing. He had learned not to explain human behavior too much. The other species on the station found humans confusing enough already. They could not understand why humans needed so much sleep, why they ate such a variety of foods, or why they seemed comfortable in environments that would stress most other beings. The communication panel on the wall buzzed to life. Captain Veltar's voice filled the laboratory, speaking in the universal trade language that all spacefaring species used. "All crew members report to the main conference room immediately. We have received a priority signal." Dr. Nara's antennae twitched with interest. "Priority signals are rare out here. Must be important." Hyunwoo followed her through the station's curved corridors. The Kepler 442b was not large, designed for research rather than comfort. 12 crew members was actually quite crowded for a station this size, but the work required specialists from many different worlds. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy when they arrived. Captain Veltar stood at the head of the oval table, his gray skin darker than usual, which Hyunwoo had learned meant the Zenthari was worried. The captain's forearms gestured as he spoke to Engineer Kibo, whose crystalline body reflected the room's lights in rainbow patterns. "Ah, Dr. Nara. Researcher Hyunwoo, please take your seats," Captain Veltar said. "We can begin now that everyone is here." Hyunwoo looked around the table at his crewmates. There was Jimin, another human who worked in the hydroponics bay. She gave him a small nod. The others were familiar faces by now, even if he could not pronounce all their names correctly. Beings from the Helion Consortium, the Rift Collectives, and half a dozen other species, all brought together by their shared interest in xenobotany. Captain Veltar activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A star chart appeared, showing their current position and a red blinking dot not far away. 30 minutes ago we received a distress signal from this location, the captain explained. The signal identifies the vessel as the transport ship Morning Glory, registry number 7745 Delta. According to the database, it carries a crew of 6 and was last reported leaving the Helix Nebula 3 weeks ago. Dr. Nara leaned forward, her large eyes reflecting the hologram's light. That puts them significantly off their filed course. "What does the distress signal say?" "The message is brief and automated," Captain Veltar replied. "It simply states hull breach, life support failing, require immediate assistance." The signal has been repeating every 10 minutes for the past hour. Engineer Kibo's crystalline body chimed softly as he processed this information. "The Morning Glory is a Class C transport, sturdy vessel. It would take significant damage to cause a hull breach large enough to threaten life support. Which is exactly why we must investigate," Captain Veltar said, his 4 hands moving in the gesture that indicated firm decision among his people. "Protocol requires us to render aid to any vessel in distress." Hyunwoo felt something cold settle in his stomach. He could not explain why, but the situation felt wrong. The location was suspicious, the timing strange. He raised his hand slightly. "Captain, if I may ask a question?" "Of course, Researcher Hyunwoo." The Morning Glory was traveling from the Helix Nebula. That route would normally take them through the Centauri Junction, not anywhere near our position. How did they end up so far off course? Captain Veltar's skin grew slightly darker. "Navigation errors happen, especially in this region. The gravitational effects from the binary star system can interfere with standard navigation equipment. But sir, Yunwu continued, if they have been off course for weeks, why are we only now receiving the distress signal? Automated distress beacons have a range of several light years. We should have detected it days ago if they have been in trouble that long. The room fell quiet. Several crew members exchanged glances. Jimin looked at Hyunwoo with an expression he recognized from their few private conversations. She trusted his instincts even when she could not understand them. Dr. Nara's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of agitation. The human raises valid points, Captain. Perhaps we should contact Stellar Command before proceeding. And let 6 beings die while we wait for bureaucratic approval? Captain Veltar's voice carried the authority of someone who had made difficult decisions before. The nearest Stellar Command vessel is 4 days away at best. By then any survivors will be dead. Engineer Kibo chimed again, his voice like crystal bells. I can modify our sensors to perform a deep scan of the vessel before we approach. If there are any unusual readings, we could withdraw and call for military assistance. Excellent suggestion, Captain Veltar said. We will proceed with caution, but we will proceed. I will not have it said that a crew under my command ignored beings in distress. Hyunwoo wanted to speak again, but something told him to remain quiet. The feeling in his stomach had not gone away. If anything, it had grown stronger. Every instinct he possessed screamed that they were making a mistake, but he could not articulate why without sounding paranoid. The meeting broke up with assignments for each crew member. Hyunwoo found himself assigned to the medical bay, ready to assist with any survivors they might find. As the others filed out, discussing the rescue mission in excited voices, Jimin approached him. You look worried, she said quietly in Korean, knowing that most of the other crew members did not understand their native language. Something is not right about this, Hyunwoo replied in the same language. The timing, the location, the fact that we are receiving the signal now but not before. It feels like what? Hyunwoo hesitated. How could he explain the feeling that crawled up his spine? The sense that they were being watched by something in the darkness between the stars. How could he tell her that every human instinct inherited from millions of years of evolution was telling him to run? Like we are walking into a trap, he finally said. Jimin nodded slowly. I trust your feelings about these things. They have been right before. Should we speak to the captain again? He has made his decision. And maybe I am wrong. Maybe there really are people who need help. But even as he said the words, Hyunwoo did not believe them. Something was coming for them in the darkness. Something that had used the oldest trick in any predator's handbook, the distress call of injured prey. 2 hours later, the station's engines hummed to life, carrying them toward their rendezvous with whatever waited in the shadow of the binary stars. Hyunwoo stood again at the observation window, but this time he was not looking at the beauty of space. He was searching the darkness for the eyes he could feel watching them approach. The hunt, though none of them knew it yet, had already begun. The morning glory hung motionless in space like a dead thing. Its hull showed no obvious damage from the outside, which made Captain Veltar even more nervous as their station approached the docking port. The transport ship was completely dark except for the faint red glow of emergency lighting bleeding through a few small windows. Life signs? Captain Veltar asked from his position on the bridge. Engineer Kibo's crystalline form chimed softly as he studied his instruments. Detecting 6 biological signatures aboard the vessel, Captain. All very weak but present. They appear to be in the cargo hold section. What about environmental conditions? Atmosphere is breathable but thin. Temperature is dropping rapidly. Hull breach appears to be in the forward sections, but emergency bulkheads have sealed it off. Hyunwoo stood behind the captain's chair, watching the dark ship grow larger as they approached. The feeling of wrongness had not left him. If anything, it had grown stronger with each passing hour. Something about the biological signatures bothered him, though he could not put his finger on what. The readings seem strange, he said quietly to Jimin, who was monitoring communications. 6 life signs, but they are all clustered together. If the ship was damaged and they sealed off sections, would they not spread out to different safe areas? Jimin nodded, understanding his concern. Unless they were injured and helping each other, or unless they are afraid of something. The docking sequence took 20 minutes. Standard protocol required them to run full decontamination scans and atmosphere checks before opening the connecting tunnel. Everything appeared normal. which somehow made Hyun-woo more nervous rather than less. Captain Veltar selected a boarding party of 4. Himself, Dr. Nara, Engineer Kibo, and a security specialist named Tae-ho, the only other human on the station besides Hyun-woo and Ji-min. The rest of the crew would monitor from the main station and coordinate any rescue efforts. Maintain open communication channels at all times, Captain Veltar instructed. If anything seems wrong, we withdraw immediately and call for military support. Hyun-woo watched through the security cameras as the boarding party entered the morning glory. The ship's corridors were dark and cold, filled with the emergency lighting that painted everything in shades of red. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the thin atmosphere. Moving toward the cargo hold where the life signs are concentrated, Captain Veltar reported through the communication system. No signs of the crew in the forward sections. Hull breach appears to be sealed properly. Dr. Nara's voice came through clearly. Something feels wrong about the air in here. It smells strange, like something organic, but not quite right. Organic how? Hyun-woo asked from the station. Sweet, but with an undertone that reminds me of decay. I cannot place it exactly. The boarding party reached the cargo hold. Through their helmet cameras, the station crew watched as Captain Veltar activated the door controls. The massive door slid open with a grinding sound that suggested damaged mechanisms. The cargo hold was enormous, filled with shipping containers and storage units. Emergency lighting cast long shadows between the stacked cargo. And there, in the center of the hold, were 6 forms lying on the deck. Found the crew, Tae-ho reported, moving forward with his medical scanner. They appear to be unconscious but alive. Dr. Nara followed, her own instruments active. Biological readings are strange. They are alive, but their vital signs are very unusual, almost like they are in some kind of hibernation state. Engineer Kibo remained near the door, his crystalline body reflecting the red emergency lights. Captain, I am detecting some unusual energy readings from the far end of the cargo hold. Something is generating a low-level electromagnetic field. Investigate it, Captain Veltar ordered, but stay within sight of the rest of us. That was when everything went wrong. Kibo had barely taken 10 steps into the shadows when something massive moved between the cargo containers. The camera feeds showed a brief glimpse of something that made no sense. Something huge and dark with too many angles and a surface that seemed to absorb light. Kibo's scream was unlike anything Hyun-woo had ever heard. It was the sound of crystal being shattered, a high-pitched wailing that hurt to listen to. The camera feed from his helmet went to static, then went dead completely. Kibo, Captain Veltar shouted, drawing his sidearm. Report. There was no response. Where Engineer Kibo had been standing, there was only darkness and the sound of something large moving through the cargo containers. Dr. Nara's voice shook as she spoke. Captain, the crew members on the deck. They are not unconscious. They are dead. These readings, they have been dead for days. Something has been keeping their bodies preserved. The lights in the cargo hold went out. Emergency lighting flickered and died, leaving the boarding party in complete darkness except for their helmet lights. Through the communication system, the station crew could hear heavy breathing and the sound of footsteps running across metal deck plates. Everyone back to the docking port now, Captain Veltar ordered. Something roared in the darkness. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Echoing through the ship's corridors, the helmet cameras showed glimpses of movement, shadows that moved wrong, shapes that hurt to look at directly. Tae-ho screamed. His camera feed showed something impossible, claws the size of sword blades sliding through his chest from behind. The camera tilted as he fell, showing a brief view of what had killed him. Hyun-woo felt his blood turn cold. The thing standing over Tae-ho's body was like nothing he had ever seen described in any xenobiology textbook. It was tall, easily 12 feet, with a body that seemed to be made of living shadow and chitinous plates. Multiple sensory organs moved independently across its head, and its limbs ended in claws that gleamed even in the dim light. Ravager, Dr. Nara whispered, and Hyun-woo could hear the terror in her voice even through the communication static. It is a Ravager. Captain Veltar and Dr. Nara ran through the ship's corridors, their helmet lights bouncing wildly as they tried to reach the docking port. Behind them, the thing that had killed Tae-ho and Kibo followed with deliberate, unhurried steps. It was not chasing them, it was hurting them. Emergency protocols, Captain Veltar shouted into his communicator. Seal the docking port. Do not let that thing onto the station. But it was too late. The Ravager moved with impossible speed when it wanted to. The last thing the station crew saw through Captain Veltar's helmet camera was darkness rushing toward them. And then the communication feed went dead. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the research station. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing off the docking port, but not before something had already slipped through. The lights in the corridor near the docking port went out section by section, as if the darkness itself was spreading through their home. Hyunwoo stood in the main control room with the 8 surviving crew members, watching their security monitors show nothing but empty corridors and dead camera feeds. Somewhere in their station, a legendary killer was hunting them. "What is a Ravager?" Jimin asked quietly. Dr. Nara's assistant, a young Calaxian named Doksu, answered in a shaking voice. "They are myths. Stories told to frighten young ones, creatures from the void between galaxies that hunt sentient beings across the stars. No one has ever survived an encounter with one. Until now," Hyunwoo said, though he was not sure why he felt so certain they would survive. Something deep in his mind was waking up, something that had been sleeping for the 6 months he had been on the peaceful research station, something that remembered what it felt like to be hunted. The lights in the main control room flickered and went out. In the darkness, they could hear something moving through the ventilation system above their heads. The hunt had truly begun. The emergency lighting cast red shadows across the medical bay, where the 8 surviving crew members had barricaded themselves. They had been hiding for 3 hours now, listening to the sounds of the Ravager moving through the station's corridors. Sometimes they heard metal being torn apart. Sometimes they heard the creature's claws scraping against the walls. Sometimes they heard nothing at all, which was somehow worse. Jimin huddled next to a medical cabinet, her face pale in the dim light. "How long before a rescue ship arrives?" "The nearest patrol vessel is 4 days away," replied Doksu, the young Calaxian scientist. His blue skin had turned almost gray with fear. "Even if they received our distress signal immediately, we would have to survive until then." 4 days, whispered Hayrin, a botanist from the Helian Consortium, whose crystalline body normally glowed with soft light. Now she was dim, almost invisible in the darkness. "That thing will find us long before then." Hyunwoo sat apart from the others, his back against the wall, listening to sounds they could not hear. His breathing was slow and steady, unlike the rapid, panicked gasps of his crewmates. While they jumped at every small noise, he remained perfectly still, his head tilted slightly as if tracking something through the walls. "How are you so calm?" Doksu asked him. "Do humans not feel fear?" "We feel it," Hyunwoo replied quietly. "We just react differently. The truth was more complicated than that." Hyunwoo did feel fear, but it was not the paralyzing terror that gripped the others. His fear was sharper, more focused. It made him think clearer, move faster, notice details that others missed. This was not the first time in his life that something had tried to kill him, though it was certainly the largest and most alien. A loud crash echoed through the station, followed by the hiss of escaping atmosphere. The Ravager had torn through another bulkhead, getting closer to their hiding place. The creature seemed to be taking its time, enjoying the hunt rather than simply killing them quickly. "Why is it not just breaking down the door?" Hayrin whispered. "It is certainly strong enough." "Because it likes the fear," Hyunwoo said. "It feeds on terror as much as flesh. The longer it draws this out, the more frightened you become. Fear changes the taste of meat, makes hormones flood the blood. For a predator like this, scared prey probably tastes better." The others stared at him with a mixture of shock and disgust. "How do you know that?" Jimin asked. Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. "Because that is how predators think. And humans know about predators because we have been both prey and predator for millions of years." Before anyone could respond, the lights in the medical bay went out completely. Emergency power had finally failed in this section. They were left in absolute darkness, listening to each other's breathing and the sound of their own heartbeats. That was when the Ravager found them. The medical bay door, reinforced and locked, simply exploded inward. Metal fragments scattered across the room as something massive forced its way through the doorway. In the darkness, they could see the faint outline of the creature, its chitinous plates reflecting what little light came from the corridor. The Ravager stood in the doorway for a moment, its multiple sensory organs turning to focus on each of them in turn. It was savoring the moment, Hyunwoo realized. This was the part it enjoyed most. Doksu broke first. The young Quilaxian screamed and ran toward the back of the medical bay, his terror overriding his common sense. The Ravager moved with lazy speed, almost playing with its prey. One claw swept through the air where Doksu had been standing, missing him by inches. The creature was toying with them. That was its mistake. While the Ravager focused on Doksu's panicked flight, Hyunwoo moved, not away from the creature but toward it. His hand closed around a surgical laser from the medical equipment tray, and in one fluid motion, he drove the cutting tool deep into the cluster of sensory organs on the creature's head. The Ravager shrieked, a sound like tearing metal that filled the medical bay and echoed through the station. It spun toward Hyunwoo, claws slashing where he had been standing, but the human was no longer there. He had rolled away, putting the medical examination table between himself and the creature. For the first time since boarding their station, the Ravager had been hurt. The creature retreated into the corridor, ichor dripping from its wounded sensory cluster. Its roar of pain and rage shook the walls. But more importantly, there was something else in that sound, something that made the other crew members stare at Hyunwoo in shock. Fear, the legendary Ravager, the unstoppable killer from the void, was afraid. "How did you move so fast?" Hyren whispered. "I could barely see you. And you knew exactly where to hit it," Jimin added. "How did you know that would hurt it?" Hyunwoo wiped the creature's blood off his hands with a medical cloth. His movements were calm and methodical, but his eyes held a darkness that none of them had seen before. When he spoke, his voice carried a different tone, colder and more focused. "I studied its body language, the way it moved its sensory cluster, the way it oriented itself toward sounds and movement. Those organs were the most active part of its nervous system, so they were also the most vulnerable." "Basic predator anatomy. Basic predator anatomy?" Doksu repeated. "How do you know about predator anatomy?" Hyunwoo looked at each of them in turn. In the dim emergency lighting, his face seemed different somehow, harder, more dangerous. "Because humans are predators," he said simply. "Everyone thinks we are weak because we come from what the galactic databases classify as a moderate world. But Earth is not moderate. It is a planet where everything evolved to kill everything else. We did not become the dominant species through intelligence alone." He moved to the medical bay's remaining equipment, quickly assembling what looked like improvised weapons from surgical tools and emergency supplies. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as if he had done this before. "Your species evolved in relatively safe environments," he continued, not looking up from his work. "You had some predators, some challenges, but nothing like what Earth produced. Humans evolved alongside creatures that could kill them in hundreds of different ways. We learned to be more dangerous than the things that hunted us." Jimin stepped closer to him. "Hyunwoo, what are you talking about? You are a botanist. You study plants." He looked up at her and she took a step back from what she saw in his eyes. "I am a botanist who grew up on Earth," he said. "Do you know what humans do for recreation on Earth? We climb mountains that can kill us from lack of oxygen. We swim in oceans filled with creatures that see us as food. We walk through forests where poisonous plants can kill us with a touch, where predators hunt us for sport. We call it camping." The others stared at him in horrified fascination. "We are the species that looked at wolves, pack hunters that could tear us apart, and decided to make them into pets. We are the species that domesticated the most dangerous predators on our planet and turned them into companions. We do not just survive alongside apex predators. We make them serve us." The sound of claws on metal echoed through the corridor outside. The Ravager was returning, but it was moving more carefully now. The easy confidence was gone from its movements. Hyunwoo finished his preparations and stood up. In his hands were improvised weapons that looked crude but deadly. More importantly, his entire posture had changed. He no longer moved like a peaceful researcher. He moved like something that was ready to hunt. "That creature out there thinks it is the apex predator in this situation," he said. "It has probably never been wrong about that before, but it has never encountered a human who stopped pretending to be civilized." He walked toward the broken doorway, and the others instinctively moved away from him. There was something in his movement now that triggered deep, evolutionary responses in their minds, something that said predator. "Hyunwoo, what are you doing?" Jimin called after him. He paused at the doorway and looked back. His smile was not the friendly expression they were used to. It was the smile of something that had found prey. "I am going hunting." The surviving crew members watched him disappear into the dark corridor, and for the first time since the Ravager had invaded their station, they were not sure which creature they should be more afraid of. The corridors of the research station had become a maze of darkness and twisted metal. The Ravager had torn through bulkheads and support structures, reshaping the familiar paths into something alien and threatening. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting moving shadows that could hide either predator or prey. Hyunwoo moved through this changed landscape like liquid smoke. His footsteps made no sound on the metal deck plates. His breathing was so quiet that even the station's sensitive audio pickups could not detect him. He had become something the other crew members would not recognize, a human in full hunting mode. In the medical bay, the 5 surviving crew members watched him through the station's remaining security cameras. The feeds were patchy and filled with static, but they could track his progress through the corridors. What they saw made them question everything they thought they knew about humans. "He moves like a ghost," whispered Hayrin, her crystalline body barely glowing in the dim light. "I can see him on the monitors, but if I did not know he was there, I would never notice him." Jimin leaned closer to the display. "Look at how he moves his head. He is listening to something we cannot hear." And his eyes, the way they track movement in the shadows. Doksu, the young Quilaxian, made soft clicking sounds of distress. This is not how humans behave. In all the xenobiology texts, humans are described as social, cooperative, non-aggressive. What we are seeing contradicts everything in the databases. Maybe the databases are wrong, Jimin said quietly. On the monitors, they watched Hyunwoo pause at an intersection of corridors. He tilted his head, listening, then moved toward a section where the Ravager had torn through the wall plating. Instead of avoiding the damage, he studied it with the focus of someone reading a book. He is tracking it, Hayrin realized. He is reading the damage patterns to understand how the creature moves, where it went, what it was thinking when it made each tear in the metal. Through their communication system, they could hear Hyunwoo's voice. Though he spoke so quietly, they had to strain to listen. Claw marks showed downward pressure, then lateral tearing, he murmured to himself. It was not just breaking through. It was marking territory, showing dominance. The scratches are deeper than necessary for simple destruction. This creature takes pride in its work. He moved deeper into the damaged section, following a trail of destruction that was invisible to the others, but clear as day to him. When he spoke again, his voice carried to the medical bay through the internal communications. The blood patterns show it was bleeding from the head wound when it came through here. Good. Injured predators make mistakes. They get angry, lose patience, start thinking with emotion instead of instinct. Doksu's antennae twitched with nervous energy. He talks about that creature like he understands it personally. Because he does, Jimin said with growing realization. He thinks like it thinks. He knows what it knows because humans have been both predator and prey for so long that we understand the mental patterns of hunting. On the monitor, Hyunwoo had reached a section where the station's gravity generators had been damaged. The artificial gravity flickered on and off, causing loose debris to float and settle randomly. Most beings would find this disorienting, dangerous. Hyunwoo used it. He moved through the shifting gravity like he had been born in space, using the floating debris as handholds and stepping stones. When a piece of torn metal drifted past, he caught it without looking and examined the scratches on its surface. It passed through here less than an hour ago, he said to himself. Still bleeding, but the flow has slowed. The wound is clotting. I need to reopen it before it heals completely. He disappeared into a maintenance shaft, and the security cameras lost him for several minutes. When he reappeared, he was in a completely different section of the station, somehow having traveled through passages too small for normal use. How did he get there so fast? Hayrin asked. The maintenance shafts are barely large enough for emergency repairs. Humans are more flexible than we realized, Jimin answered. And apparently they do not mind tight spaces the way most species do. Hyunwoo emerged from the maintenance shaft behind where the Ravager had been moving. Now he was the one following the creature instead of the other way around. The transformation from prey to predator had completed itself. They watched him set up what could only be called a trap. Using damaged power cables and pieces of torn bulkhead, he created a snare that would activate when something heavy stepped on the deck plating. It was simple but effective, designed not to kill but to wound and confuse. He is not trying to avoid the creature anymore, Doksu observed. He wants to fight it. No, Jimin corrected, studying Hyunwoo's movements on the screen. He wants to hunt it. There is a difference. The Ravager appeared on the monitors, moving through a corridor 3 sections away from where Hyunwoo waited. The creature had been searching for the humans, but now it moved with less confidence. The wound to its sensory cluster was clearly bothering it, and it kept pausing to listen for sounds that might indicate where its prey had gone. What it did not realize was that it had become the prey. Hyunwoo spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper, but clear through the communication system. Predators have patterns. This one is used to being the biggest, fastest, strongest thing in any environment. It has never had to be careful before. That makes it predictable. He moved through the corridors with purpose now, no longer hiding but positioning himself. The crew in the medical bay realized he was herding the Ravager toward his trap, using sounds and movements to guide it without it realizing what was happening. Impossible, breathed Heirin. That creature has senses we cannot even understand. How can he manipulate its behavior without it knowing? Because he understands something about predator psychology that we do not, Jimin said. Watch how he moves. Every step is calculated to trigger the creature's hunting instincts while making it think it is still in control. The Ravager took the bait. It followed what it thought were signs of fleeing prey directly into Hyunwoo's trap. When the snare activated, power cables wrapped around one of the creature's legs while torn metal fell from the ceiling, striking its already injured head. The creature roared in pain and rage, thrashing against the trap, but instead of escaping quickly, it wasted time destroying everything around it in a fury. That was exactly what Hyunwoo had counted on. While the Ravager was distracted by its anger, Hyunwoo struck again. This time he used a piece of sharp metal like a spear, driving it deep into the creature's shoulder joint where the chitinous plates did not overlap. The Ravager spun toward him, claws slashing, but Hyunwoo was already gone. He heard it again, Doksu said in amazement, and he escaped without injury. How is that possible? Because he is faster than it expects, Jimin realized. The creature is used to hunting species that panic when threatened. Hyunwoo does not panic, he thinks. The pattern repeated 3 more times over the next hour. Hyunwoo would set a trap, lure the Ravager into it, strike at its weak points, then disappear before it could retaliate. Each attack left the creature more wounded and more frustrated. But more importantly, each attack left the Ravager more frightened. The legendary killer that had never known fear was learning what it felt like to be hunted by something more dangerous than itself. Its movements became more cautious, more defensive. It stopped roaring challenges and started looking over its shoulder. It is afraid, Heirin whispered in wonder. A Ravager is actually afraid of something. Not something, Jimin corrected. Someone. It is afraid of Hyunwoo. On the monitors, they watched the human prepare for what looked like a final confrontation. He had driven the wounded Ravager into a dead-end corridor where it could not escape or maneuver easily. In his hands were improvised weapons made from station components, sharp metal fragments, power tools, and chemical compounds from the laboratory stores. But the most dangerous weapon he carried was something invisible, the psychological certainty that he was the superior predator in this encounter. That confidence radiated from his every movement, and even through the security cameras the crew could feel its effect. He is not just hunting that creature, Doksu said in a voice filled with awe and terror. He is breaking its spirit. He is teaching it what it feels like to be prey. Hyunwoo stepped into the corridor where the Ravager waited, wounded and cornered. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the station's communication system. Your turn to be afraid, he said to the creature that had killed half their crew. The Ravager, for the first time in its existence, tried to run away. The dead-end corridor stretched 30 meters from the sealed emergency bulkhead to where Hyunwoo stood blocking the only exit. The Ravager crouched at the far end, its massive form filling the narrow space. Multiple wounds leaked dark ichor onto the metal deck plates, and its once confident movements had become careful, almost hesitant. For the first time in its hunting existence, the Ravager was trapped. In the medical bay, the 5 surviving crew members watched through the security cameras as 2 apex predators from different worlds faced each other in a space too small for mercy. The feeds flickered with static, but the images were clear enough to show the impossible. A human, barely 6 feet tall and weighing perhaps 180 pounds, had cornered a 12-foot killing machine that could tear through starship hulls. This cannot be happening, Doksu whispered, his blue skin pale with shock. Humans are classified as peaceful researchers. The galactic databases say they avoid confrontation. The databases are wrong, Jimin said. her voice filled with a mixture of pride and terror as she watched her fellow human prepare for battle. We have all been wrong about what humans really are. On the monitor, Hyunwoo moved with the fluid grace of something born to fight. In his hands were weapons he had crafted from station components, a spear made from a support strut, chemical containers that could blind or burn, and improvised explosives created from power cell components. But his most dangerous asset was invisible, the absolute certainty that he would win this fight. The Ravager sensed that certainty, and it frightened the creature more than any wound. "You made a mistake," Hyunwoo said to the cornered predator, his voice carrying clearly through the communication system. "You thought this would be easy. You thought we were just another species of prey animals to be hunted and eaten." He took a step forward, and the Ravager actually backed away, pressing against the sealed bulkhead. "But humans are not prey animals. We are the species that looked at every dangerous creature on our planet and decided we wanted to be more dangerous. We are the species that took wolves, the most successful pack hunters in our ecosystem, and turned them into pets that follow our commands." Another step forward. The space between them closed to 20 meters. "We are the species that saw the deadliest predators on Earth and thought, how can we make those serve us too? Do you know what humans do with creatures like you on our world? We put them in cages and charge admission for people to look at them." The Ravager roared, but there was something different about the sound. Where before it had been a challenge, a declaration of dominance, now it sounded almost like a plea. The creature was trying to intimidate something that could not be intimidated. Hyunwoo laughed, and the sound made even his crewmates shiver. "You want to know the truth about humans?" he continued, moving closer with each word. "We are persistence hunters. That means when we decide to kill something, we never stop. We follow our prey across continents if necessary. We track them for days, weeks, months. We outlast them, outweight them, and when they finally collapse from exhaustion, we move in for the kill." 10 meters now. The Ravager's sensory organs twitched frantically, searching for an escape route that did not exist. "And the best part about being human?" Hyunwoo's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow that made it more terrifying than any shout. "We do not just kill our prey. We make sure they know they are going to die. We let them see it coming. We want them to be afraid." The Ravager struck. Desperation gave the wounded creature speed it should not have possessed. Claws the size of sword blades swept through the air where Hyunwoo had been standing. But the human was no longer there. He had rolled to the side, using his smaller size and superior mobility to avoid the attack. As the Ravager's momentum carried it forward, Hyunwoo struck with his improvised spear, driving the sharpened strut deep into the joint where the creature's arm met its torso. The Ravager shrieked and spun, trying to catch him with its other claw, but Hyunwoo was already moving. The fight that followed was unlike anything the surviving crew had ever witnessed. It was not a battle between equals, despite the vast difference in size and strength. It was a demonstration of why humans had become the dominant species on a planet that had tried to kill them for millions of years. The Ravager had size, strength, natural weapons, and armor. Hyunwoo had intelligence, adaptability, endurance, and something more important than all of those combined: the absolute refusal to give up. Every time the creature struck, Hyunwoo was somewhere else. Every time it thought it had him cornered, he found an escape route it had not considered. And every few seconds he would strike back, each attack precisely targeted at the creature's weakest points. "He is not trying to overpower it," Heirin observed, watching the combat with fascination and horror. "He is wearing it down, making it waste energy on attacks that miss while he conserves his strength." "Persistence hunting," Jimin said, understanding now what Hyunwoo had meant. "He does not need to be stronger. He just needs to last longer." The Ravager was bleeding from dozens of small wounds now. None were immediately fatal, but together they were draining its strength and coordination. Worse, the creature was becoming frantic, making mistakes that a calm predator would never make. Hyunwoo, by contrast, showed no signs of fatigue. His breathing was still controlled, his movements still precise. If anything, he seemed to be getting stronger as the fight continued, feeding off the creature's growing desperation. "Impossible," Doksu breathed. How can he maintain that level of performance? The energy expenditure alone should have exhausted him by now. "Because humans evolved for exactly this kind of fight," Jimin explained, her understanding of her own species growing with each passing moment. Our ancestors hunted mammoths and saber-toothed cats with nothing but sharpened sticks and the refusal to quit. This is what we were built for. The end came suddenly. The Ravager, weakened by blood loss and exhausted from its frantic attacks, stumbled. It was only for a moment, but that moment was all Hyunwoo needed. He moved like lightning, driving his spear deep into the creature's neck, just below the armored head where the chitinous plates were thinnest. The Ravager convulsed, its claws scraping against the corridor walls as it tried one last time to reach its tormentor. But Hyunwoo was not finished. With clinical precision, he withdrew the spear and struck again, this time targeting the creature's primary breathing apparatus. The Ravager's movements became weaker, more desperate. "Please," it said. The word came out as a series of clicks and hisses, but the universal translator made its meaning clear. The legendary killer that had terrorized the galaxy for unknown centuries was begging for mercy. Hyunwoo looked down at the dying creature with eyes that held no compassion, no regret, and no mercy. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millions of years of human evolution. No. The final strike severed the creature's spinal column just below its brain cluster. The Ravager went still, its multiple eyes losing their light one by one. The apex predator that had never known defeat lay dead at the feet of a botanist from Earth. In the medical bay, the surviving crew members stared at their monitors in absolute silence. What they had witnessed went against everything they thought they knew about humans. About predator and prey relationships. About the natural order of the galaxy itself. Hyunwoo stood over the Ravager's corpse, breathing heavily for the first time since the fight began. Dark blood covered his improvised weapons and stained his clothes, but he seemed unaware of it. His attention was focused entirely on making sure his enemy was truly dead. Only when he was satisfied that the threat was eliminated did he look up at the security camera. The expression on his face made all 5 survivors take an involuntary step backward, even though he was 3 corridors away. It was not the face of the gentle researcher they had known for 6 months. It was the face of something that had just reminded the universe why humans were the apex predators of their world. "Threat eliminated," he said calmly into his communicator. "Medical bay is secure. You can come out now." But none of them moved. They were not sure they wanted to be in the same room with whatever Hyunwoo had become. "Ji-min," his voice came again, softer this time, carrying a note of concern. "Are you all right? Is everyone safe?" Slowly, carefully, Ji-min activated her communicator. "We are safe, Hyunwoo. But are you? Are you still you?" There was a long pause before he answered. When he did, his voice carried a weariness that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. "I am still me," he said. "This is who I have always been. This is who all humans are underneath the civilization and the peaceful smiles. We are the species that conquered a planet where everything was trying to kill us. We did not become peaceful because we evolved that way. We became peaceful because we chose to be." He looked directly at the camera, and for a moment they could see past the predator to the man they had known. The botanist who grew flowers in the hydroponics bay. The researcher who spent hours cataloging plant samples with infinite patience. The friend who had shared meals and stories with them for 6 months. "But when something threatens the people we care about," he continued, "we remember what we used to be, what we can become again when we have to." The transformation was visible even through the security. 3 days later, the rescue ship Harmony's Light docked, with the research station Kepler 442b. Captain, Felmore of the Galactic Rescue Service expected to find either survivors in need of immediate medical attention or a tomb filled with the remains of another crew that had fallen victim to the void's many dangers. What he found instead changed everything. The galaxy thought it knew about humans. The station was clean, not just functional, but actually cleaner than most active research facilities. The corridors had been repaired, the lighting restored, and all biological hazards had been completely eliminated. If not for the official distress signal in their files, the rescue team might have assumed they had responded to a false alarm. The 5 survivors met them at the docking port, all in good health and surprisingly calm for beings who had reportedly survived an encounter with a Ravager. Captain Velmore, a veteran of 40 years in space rescue operations, had never seen survivors of a major incident look so composed. "Captain Velmore," Dr. Nara's assistant Doksu said, stepping forward as the designated spokesperson for the group. "Thank you for responding to our distress call. We are grateful for your assistance, though the immediate danger has passed." "Passed?" Captain Velmore's forearms gestured in confusion. Our intelligence reports indicated a Ravager attack. Those creatures do not simply leave. They hunt until they have killed everything on a vessel or station. The Ravager is dead, Jimin said simply. The rescue team exchanged glances. In the recorded history of galactic civilization, no crew had ever successfully fought off a Ravager attack. Survival required either extremely heavy military intervention or pure luck in the form of the creature becoming distracted by other prey. Dead? Captain Velmore repeated. How is that possible? What military assets were you able to call upon? We had no military assets, Doksu replied. We had a human. The rescue team captain's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. Humans were classified in all galactic databases as peaceful researchers and traders. They were known for their curiosity, their adaptability, and their tendency to avoid conflict whenever possible. They were not known for being able to kill legendary predators in single combat. I will need to speak with this human, Captain Velmore said. Where is he now? In the hydroponics bay, Jimin answered. He returned to his plant research the day after the incident. He said he had lost too much time already and needed to catch up on his work. Captain Velmore found Hyunwoo exactly where they said he would be, carefully tending to a collection of flowering plants from 12 different worlds. The human looked up from his work with the same gentle smile that had fooled his crewmates for 6 months. Captain Velmore, I assume? Welcome to the Kepler 442b research station. I apologize for the circumstances that brought you here, but I am glad you could respond so quickly. The rescue captain studied the human carefully. Hyunwoo appeared to be everything the databases said humans were: calm, polite, intellectually focused, and completely non-threatening. There was nothing in his appearance or demeanor that suggested he was capable of the violence the other survivors described. Researcher Hyunwoo, I have been told that you single-handedly killed a Ravager. Is this true? Hyunwoo considered the question while he continued his work with the plants. I defended my crewmates from a hostile creature that had invaded our station and killed several of our colleagues. The fact that this creature happened to be classified as a Ravager is somewhat irrelevant to the basic situation. Irrelevant? Captain Velmore's voice rose in pitch. Ravagers are apex predators that have terrorized the galaxy for centuries. No single being has ever successfully fought one in combat and survived. Then I suppose the galactic databases need to be updated, Hyunwoo said mildly, transplanting a seedling into a larger container with practiced care. Captain Velmore spent the next several hours interviewing each survivor separately. Their stories were consistent and detailed, describing events that should have been impossible. The human had not just survived the encounter with the Ravager. He had systematically hunted it, trapped it, and killed it in what could only be described as a display of superior predatory behavior. More disturbing were the recordings. The station's security cameras had captured most of the final hunt, and the footage showed capabilities that contradicted everything in the human behavioral profiles. Hyunwoo had moved through the darkened station like a creature born to hunt, tracking his prey with senses that rivaled any known predator species. The rescue team's xenobiologist, Dr. Kethnor, ran every scan possible on the human. The results were baffling. Hyunwoo's stress hormone levels were completely normal for someone engaged in routine research work. His cardiovascular system showed no signs of recent extreme exertion. His neural activity patterns indicated a mind at peace with itself and its recent actions. It is as if the violence never happened, Dr. Kethnor reported to Captain Velmore, or as if it was such a normal activity for him that it caused no lasting physiological impact. That cannot be correct, the captain replied. Combat with an apex predator should leave psychological and physical markers that last for weeks. Not if the being in question is itself an apex predator, Dr. Kethnor said quietly. Captain, I have been studying xenobiology for 30 years. I have never seen behavioral patterns like this. This human displays all the biological markers of a species that evolved as a primary predator, not as the peaceful traders we have classified humans to be. Captain Velmore made the decision to contact Galactic Command directly. The implications of what had happened on the research station were too significant to handle through normal rescue protocols. If humans were capable of the kind of violence he had witnessed in the security recordings, the entire galactic understanding of their species needed to be reconsidered. The response from Galactic Command was swift and classified at the highest levels. A military investigation team was dispatched immediately, along with a xenopsychologist, combat analysts, and diplomatic representatives from a dozen major civilizations. Hyun-woo continued his botanical research throughout the investigations, answering questions with patient courtesy, while never displaying the slightest sign of the predator the survivors had described. He seemed genuinely puzzled by the attention his actions had generated. "I protected my friends from something that was trying to kill them," he explained to the military investigators. "This is normal behavior for any social species. I do not understand why it requires such extensive analysis. Because normal social species do not kill ravagers," replied General Thexkar of the Galactic Defense Force. "Normal social species die when they encounter ravagers. What you did suggests capabilities that were not previously known to exist among humans." Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment, considering his response. When he spoke, his words would eventually be quoted in xenobiology textbooks throughout the galaxy. "General, I think there may be a fundamental misunderstanding about what humans are. Your databases classify us based on our behavior in peaceful, civilized environments. But humans did not evolve in peaceful environments. We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We became peaceful by choice, not by nature." He gestured toward the flowering plants around them. "These beautiful specimens exist because they developed different survival strategies. Some grew thorns, some became poisonous, some learned to hide, but some, like humans, learned to be more dangerous than the things that hunted them." General Thexkar leaned forward. "Are you saying that all humans possess these capabilities?" "I am saying that every human carries the genetic memory of millions of years of being both predator and prey. Most of us never need to access those abilities. We prefer to build, to explore, to learn, to create beauty." He touched one of the flowers gently. "But when something threatens what we protect, when our survival or the survival of those we care about is at stake, we remember what we used to be." The general's next question sent ripples through the galactic political establishment. "How many humans are currently serving on civilian vessels throughout the galaxy?" Hyun-woo smiled that same gentle, peaceful smile that had fooled his crewmates for 6 months. "Approximately 40,000 at last count. We prefer to spread out, to learn about different worlds and cultures. Humans are naturally curious about the universe around us." The implication was clear, scattered throughout the galaxy. On research stations, trading vessels, diplomatic missions, and civilian transports were 40,000 beings who appeared to be harmless researchers and diplomats, but were actually apex predators in disguise. The final report from the investigation team was classified at levels so high that only a handful of beings in the galaxy were authorized to read it. But its conclusions would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. Humans were not the peaceful species they appeared to be. They were apex predators who had developed spaceflight technology, spread throughout the galaxy in small numbers, and were apparently content to maintain the illusion of harmlessness as long as they were left in peace. The report's final recommendation was as simple as it was terrifying. Under no circumstances should any action be taken that might cause humans to reconsider their preference for peaceful